I was 14 at the time, and it seemed like an average night around 9 p.m. I was at my cousin's house, babysitting for the night while my mum and aunt were out shopping, and my dad and uncle were catching a movie. My cousin and I were in the living room, engrossed in some TV show. But then, an inexplicable feeling began to wash over me, an unsettling sense that something was terribly wrong, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I tried to shake it off and continued watching TV with my cousin. As the minutes ticked by, that eerie sensation refused to dissipate. It nagged at me relentlessly. I decided to get up and check the back door, thinking that maybe it wasn't properly locked. When I returned through the kitchen, it became clear what had been causing my strange feeling. In the window, a very decrepit and homeless-looking man stood, his eyes locked onto my cousin. Panic surged through me, and my protective instincts kicked in. I tried not to react, pretending I hadn't noticed the man, and calmly told my cousin that we should head upstairs. I said it was because our parents would be back soon and wouldn't want him staying up late. I guided my cousin upstairs and put him to bed, all the while knowing that a man was lurking outside, desiring entry. At the time, I was about 125 pounds and stood at 5'8". I played football for my school, so I had some physical confidence. Without hesitation, I went back downstairs, into the kitchen, and grabbed a meat tenderizing hammer. My gaze darted back to the window where I had seen the man before, but he was gone. My heart raced, and I rushed to the front door, checking that it was locked. Both the deadbolt and the doorknob were secured. I sprinted back upstairs, meat tenderizer in hand, and entered my cousin's room. I positioned myself in front of the door, instructing him to stay low and quiet. When he asked what I was doing, I simply reassured him and told him not to worry. I called the police and then my dad and uncle, but the cops were still half an hour away, and my dad and uncle were 45 minutes out. The minutes stretched on like hours. Then, a bone-chilling sound shattered the silence, a window breaking, followed by the heavy, menacing thud of boots on the main floor. I whispered to my cousin to stay calm, hide under the covers, and remain silent. My heart pounded as I gripped that meat tenderizer, bracing myself for what was coming. I could hear the intruder prowling downstairs, and it sent shivers down my spine. I hunkered down outside my cousin's door, my ears straining to catch every sound. It was a horrifying ordeal, and the terror that gripped me was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Suddenly, I heard the unmistakable sound of heavy boots ascending the stairs. Panic surged through me, knowing that my cousin's room was no more than 10 feet from the top of the staircase. I clutched the meat tenderizer even tighter, my heart racing as I prepared for a confrontation. I listened as the intruder methodically opened doors, checking each room. First, my aunt and uncle's room, then the bathroom. My cousin held his breath beneath the covers as the intruder moved around. Finally, the footsteps retreated downstairs, and I heard the door to the basement creak open. Fear and dread coursed through me as I waited in that narrow hallway. 15 agonizing minutes later, the police arrived and burst into the house. They apprehended the intruder, who turned out to be a man who had escaped from a mental hospital in another province. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming, but the memory of that harrowing night would forever haunt my dreams. When I was a kid, I had a strong aversion to attending funerals. It didn't matter who the deceased was. The mere thought of those somber gatherings filled me with dread. One fateful day, my parents were furious with me because I refused to go to the funeral of a close family friend. Instead, I chose to stay home alone, a decision that would haunt me for years to come. With my parents gone and the house enveloped in silence, I decided to distract myself by playing GTA 4. The virtual world of Liberty City offered a welcome escape from the reality of funerals and grief. As I sat engrossed in the game, my concentration shattered by an unexpected sound, knocking at the front door. It wasn't the typical casual knock of a visitor. It was slow, deliberate, and strangely persistent. I paused the game, feeling a hint of unease as I approached the door. Opening it cautiously, I peered outside, expecting to see a neighbor or friend playing a prank. But there was no one in sight. Confusion gnawed at me, but I chalked it up to the wind or my overactive imagination. I returned to the game, hoping to lose myself in the digital chaos once more. About 20 minutes later, the knocking resumed, louder and more desperate this time. It jolted me from my seat, my heart racing in my chest. I rushed to the window, expecting to catch a glimpse of the prankster responsible for this eerie interruption. But the yard was empty, and the street outside lay in silent solitude. Curiosity overcoming my fear, I opened the door again, cautiously stepping outside to investigate. To my astonishment, I found not a person, but an all-black German shepherd, its piercing eyes locked onto me from the other side of the fence. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, but I couldn't fathom the meaning behind it. After a moment's hesitation, I retreated indoors, deciding to put the bizarre encounter out of my mind. I resumed my gaming, attempting to bury my unease beneath the digital chaos of Liberty City. But terror has a way of clawing its way back into your consciousness. It wasn't long before I heard it, a relentless barrage of banging and kicking at the door, like someone was desperately trying to break in. My heart leaped into my throat, and I knew I couldn't ignore this any longer. Terrified, I darted to my parents' room, frantically searching for my dad's gun. Clutching it tightly, I approached the window once more, my heart pounding in my ears. To my horror, the all-black German shepherd was now on my side of the fence, standing directly in front of my door. Its intense gaze never wavered, and a profound sense of dread washed over me. In that moment, I felt utterly defenseless. My mind raced, and I couldn't comprehend how this dog had crossed the fence. The banging at the door continued, growing more frenzied, and I knew I had to act. I called the police, desperation in my voice as I pleaded for help. The minutes that passed felt like an eternity. When the authorities finally arrived, they found no sign of an intruder or the eerie dog. My relief was immense, but the trauma of that night lingered. Years later, I mustered the courage to confront my dad about the terrifying ordeal. His laughter surprised me, and he revealed that he had orchestrated the whole thing, asking a friend to play that sinister prank on me. I was initially furious, but as I reflected on it, I couldn't help but laugh along. It was, after all, a prank that had truly traumatized me, one I would never forget. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, its rhythmic cadence the only sound in the dimly lit room. I sat alone in the living room, the soft glow of the television casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. My husband was away on a business trip, and the house had taken on an unfamiliar and unsettling stillness. It was a typical suburban evening, with the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustling of leaves outside. But as the night deepened, an unease settled over me like a heavy shroud. The creaking of the old house, the whisper of the wind through the trees, they all seemed to conspire to unsettle my nerves. I had always been fine with solitude, but this night was different. The darkness beyond the windows felt thick and oppressive, and the knowledge that I was alone in the house weighed on me like a leaden blanket. I tried to distract myself with the television, flipping through channels in search of something to occupy my thoughts. But each show and movie only served to heighten my unease. The characters on the screen seemed to echo my isolation, their loneliness a reflection of my own. As the night wore on, the sense of being watched settled over me like a cold hand on my shoulder. I dismissed it as mere paranoia, the product of an overactive imagination, but the feeling persisted. I couldn't shake the idea that something, or someone, was lurking in the darkness, just beyond my line of sight. I got up and moved to the kitchen, hoping that a change of scenery would alleviate my unease. The soft glow of the refrigerator provided a modicum of comfort as I reached for a glass of water, but as I turned to leave, something in the window caught my eye. A figure stood outside, partially obscured by the bushes in the front yard. My heart leaped into my throat as I froze, my breath catching in my chest. The intruder was tall and indistinct in the darkness, their features hidden in the shadows. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Had someone been watching the house, waiting for this opportunity? I fumbled for my phone, my trembling fingers struggling to dial 911. As I spoke to the dispatcher, my voice quivering with fear, I kept my eyes fixed on the figure outside. They seemed to sense my growing panic, for they took a step closer into the faint pool of light cast by a nearby street lamp. I gasped, my voice catching in my throat. The intruder's face was hidden beneath a grotesque mask, its features contorted into a menacing grin. It was a mask of pure malevolence, a twisted parody of a human face that sent a chill down my spine. The dispatcher assured me that help was on the way, but each passing moment felt like an eternity. The intruder continued to stand there, watching me with an unnerving stillness. They made no attempt to enter the house, but their presence alone was a suffocating terror. I retreated further into the house, locking every door and window in a frantic bid for safety. The seconds stretched into minutes, and the night seemed endless as I waited for the police to arrive. When the flashing lights of a patrol car finally pierced the darkness outside, I breathed a sigh of relief. The intruder, however, did not. As the police approached, the figure in the mask turned and melted into the shadows, disappearing into the night. The officers searched the area but found no trace of the intruder. They assured me that they would increase patrols in the neighborhood and urged me to stay vigilant. Their presence was a comfort, but the memory of that sinister mask still haunted my thoughts. With the police gone, I retreated to my bedroom, unable to shake the feeling that I was not alone. I locked the door and climbed into bed, clutching the phone beside me like a lifeline. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock a stark reminder of the terror I had endured. Sleep eluded me, and the shadows in the room seemed to twist and contort, taking on a sinister life of their own. As the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, I finally allowed myself to relax. The night had been a harrowing ordeal, but it was over. I had survived, and my husband would be returning soon. But as I stepped into the shower to wash away the residue of fear, I caught a glimpse of something in the bathroom mirror. The reflection showed me alone in the shower, but behind me, in the hallway outside the bathroom, a grotesque mask hung on the wall, its malevolent grin a chilling reminder that the night's horrors were far from over. As we wrap up this eerie journey, a huge thank you to our dedicated audience for tuning in. Your support drives us to share these spine-tingling stories. Remember, the darkness is always there, but through these tales, we face our fears together. Until next time, keep those lights on and doors locked. Thank you for watching.